Although Blade Runner's principal photography was completed by July of 1981, the post-production period, during which music, special effects and of course a controversial voiceover were added, continued right up until the film's opening in June '82. It was to be a long and difficult year, characterised by arduous edits, confused test screenings, radical recuts and even the addition of an entirely new happy ending, all played out against increasingly unhappy relations between the movie makers and the money men, kicking off on July the 11th, 1981 with the official firing from Blade Runner of producer Michael Deeley and director Ridley Scott.
We were technically fired. We weren't fired in the sense that we still came to work every day and worked. That's not normal if you're fired, but we were technically, on paper, they didn't require our service anymore. And the reason for that is they were permitted to do that because we were 10% of the budget.
I tried to articulate to Ridley later on that he's taking money that should be my children's, that I'm now digging into my personal money because of his letting the picture go on and on and on and on and on.
Somehow they feel that I thought, you know, irresponsibly and just went over anyway with a kind of fuck you attitude. And of course, because I'm dyed-in-the-wool businessman by that point, it hurt me that I went over. I hated going over.
It was just a piece of absolute rubbish and ill-mannered rubbish at that. They were going to finish the picture without the director. What are they talking about? I mean, it's just a piece of very stupid rudeness.
I wasn't too concerned about whether somebody was happy or not happy. I was now hanging out the window saying, wait a minute, you know, this has become a nightmare.
And I, you know, fired up and he said, you know, Michael goes, tut, 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 tut. Let's talk outside. So we talked outside. He said, I suggest what you do is get onto your union. And so I did. And I've been very impressed by the DGA ever since. They corrected the process instantly.
As Yorkin, Deeley and Scott worked through their differences in the aftermath of principal photography, the landscape of Blade Runner continued to grow under the eyes of the special effects team, led by visual wizard Douglas Trumbull, director of the sci-fi classic Silent Running, and a key creative player in such genre hits as Kubrick's 2001 and Spielberg's Close Encounters.
Doug is a natural scientist, and you give him a problem, he said, let me think about it, and he'd come back with a solution within a couple of days.
The look of Blade Runner is totally unique and fresh and was done relatively inexpensively and quickly. And I think the result really met what Ridley wanted to see and blended with the rest of the movie.
Ridley kept looking at what we had and said, I want to see more, and I want more vastness. And I kept saying, Ridley, we don't have the money.
He's not easy to please, and we like that. That's a good thing, because all the guys working on it, you got to remember this is a very young crew and totally couldn't wait to wake up the next morning. You go to midnight, you couldn't wait to wake up to get back to work the next day, what was going to be there.
What you're really looking at in the Hades landscape is what we call a forced perspective miniature. A building in the foreground might have been a foot tall. A building midway back might have been 4 inches tall, and a building at the far distance might have been 1 inch tall. But that whole distance from foreground to background would be about 8 feet. It was very quick to make, and then thousands of tiny fiber optic bundles coming up through the bottom of the floor and into those buildings to light them up. Once you have that all in place with the lights and the buildings and the fiber optics, we filled that room with so much smoke that you couldn't see from here to the wall.
At some point in the process, and I wasn't directly involved, so I don't know exactly what happened, but I understand that Philip Dick was reasonably unhappy. Katie Haber gave me a call and said, put together the best of the best in a reel, and it was left to me to go in with a few of my key people, and he and his friend to go down and sit in the screening room, and he said very little, and I said, roll it, and it went dark. The 10 minutes of optical takes ran. The lights came up. Philip turned around, looked me right in the eyes, and he says, how is this possible? I don't understand this. He says, this feels exactly like what I had in my head when I was writing it. How does this happen? At that moment, it was probably the best moment in my career because I said, we nailed it, we got it.
As Philip Dick was marvelling at the special effects, Ridley Scott and editor Terry Rawlings were attempting to lock down a rough cut of Blade Runner. And as they did so, they began to discard incidental scenes, such as Deckard's hospital meeting with his injured colleague Holden, excised from all released versions of the film and seen here for the very first time.
This little scene was originally scripted where he would go from Bryant's office and go interview Holden and find out what he could find from Holden about what was going on, and that's this particular scene.
What you reading?
Old favorite, Treasure Island. Deckard.
Good, friend.
It ain't like it used to be, Deck. It's tough now. These replicants aren't just a bunch of muscle miners anymore. They're no goddamn different than you or me.
What happened?
10 days ago, security at Tyrell Corp finds 3 intruders in the records room. Kills 1, 2 get away, okay? They do a routine autopsy on the one that gets aired, and what do you know, a skin job. One of the ones that busted out. Top drawer replicant, combat type, met for 6. I decided to check out all the new employees at Tyrell. I void conf 26 boring assholes when in walks this Leon somebody. Nothing special, but very big.
Were you getting anything on the machine?
Yeah, I thought maybe I was getting something. Maybe it doesn't work on these Deck. Maybe I was too slow, who knows?
AV.
It's all over, Deck. It's a wipeout. They're almost us.
When the rough cutting was finished, Blade Runner was test screened in front of audiences to see how they'd react to Scott's dark fantasy. The results of those early tests were even more disturbing than the film itself.
We sat around in the manager's office afterwards, and it was rather bleak. And Harrison was being positive, actually, saying, I think they liked it, don't you? I said, I don't know, right? We were waiting for the cards.
I mean, they've said it looks amazing, but what the hell's going on? And that's when all the panic really set in.
We all were just destroyed. I mean, Ridley sat there just like he had been hit on the head with a baseball bat, and I did too.
And the decision was that we needed a clarification, we needed a voiceover.
They don't advertise for killers in a newspaper. That was my profession. Ex-cop. Ex-Blade Runner. Ex-killer.
I was there when Harrison did it, and it was just horrendous. It was like a sort of what Ridley calls Irving the Explainer, you know. My name is Deckard, and I am an android catcher, and, you know. And Harrison hated it so much that he did it really, really badly, hoping they wouldn't use it, and they did.
I never heard that from Harrison, ever, that he hated it. If he did, he never told me.
Along with Harrison's new voiceover, Blade Runner was also now saddled with a happy ending in which Deckard and Rachel escape into a lush green landscape, actually constructed from outtakes from Stanley Kubrick's horror hit The Shining.
I always remember that we had sort of 30,000 feet turn up. We wanted about 4 shots or something. So we had 30,000, every outtake he did came up, which was good, but it was tacky. The whole idea of the end was tacky, in my opinion. It always was right when they shut that door.
Although opinion was divided about Blade Runner's narration and upbeat ending, there was a chorus of approval for the score, which would become one of the defining soundtracks of sci-fi cinema and win international plaudits for Greek composer Vangelis.
He will sit and watch every frame and cue off a frame, cue off an expression of the actor. He doesn't just lay on score and say, well, that works. He goes through everything. He thinks himself into the film.
I remember, you know, when the first notes hit me, I was like, wow.
You get that, and the whole first image comes up with the city. If that doesn't knock your socks off, then you you know, just not there.
I loved it. I was very happy with it. I was really shocked that it didn't receive as much attention initially as I thought that it would.
I didn't think it was surprising. As I say, it was disappointing. I always hoped, well, you know, it will be.
It would have little life.
Yeah, I certainly hoped it
It would
would
make its
do a
money
lot
back,
better,
at
and I was a little surprised that the reviews were as bad as they were.
Well, it was a failure, basically. I mean,
it was
that's
a
all it was.
disaster.
Yeah.
Failure
Yeah,
is even, you know.
It was, no one liked it. It was a financial, you know, loss.
I mean, I saw the audience. They were like split. It was like the Red Sea. You know, here was the people that really were like stunned, and here were the people who were pissed off, you know. That's not LA, it's so depressing. You know, that's not my town. No, it's not. Jesus.
To me, it was never intended as a commercial film. I mean, obviously they wanted it to make money, because you don't make them to lose money. But it was more I always thought of it as more of an art film. It was like an art, a grandiose art film.
That cost $28 million.
Yeah, a lot of money at that time. And what did it take? 17, 16? Not a good bet, really, was it?
The downbeat opening of Blade Runner in the summer of '82 was a disappointment both for the filmmakers and the financiers, who recouped only around half their investment from its initial theatrical run. But like the androids of Philip Dick's novel, Blade Runner wouldn't simply lie down and die quietly. In fact, due to the burgeoning home video market, it soon found itself a growing army of fans who discovered that each subsequent viewing unearthed new hidden treasures. And it was those fans, with their obsessive interest both in the film and its tortured production history, who eventually helped bring about a full-scale rebirth of Blade Runner, after a 70mm print of Ridley Scott's original cut was accidentally screened at the Fairfax Theatre in Los Angeles in May 1990.
I remember going there. I was working with David Fincher on Alien 3, and we went down to see it because he's an avid Ridley Scott fan. Yeah, and we saw that no titles on it or anything. It was just sent out as it was, and fantastic. The audience reaction, that's what I thought was incredible, to be in there with them, and you can hear them saying, wow, there's no dark, no commentary and all this stuff. It was really good. It was like what we intended.
Such was the audience enthusiasm for this early print that Warner's promptly authorised the production and release of a so-called director's cut, supervised by respected film archivist Michael Arick, to bring Blade Runner back into line with Ridley's original vision.
The goal was to use the original release version as the spine and to go back and put in certain things that he missed and primarily take out the things he felt were damaging, like the narration and the tacked-on happy ending.
I'm very satisfied. I think I'm glad we got the voiceover off. I'm glad we got the ending off. The ending didn't make any sense at all. And the ending the way we have it right now is fine. I wish I'd had a bit more action early on. Just pure action, just to raise the blood. But obviously people don't need that now because they get the film.
It's taken 20 years, really, for people to appreciate it and see it as sort of a first of its kind. I mean, now there's so many movies that have ripped off aspects of Blade Runner. It's people who don't know the film might not even think it was original, you know?
It was a very dim and dismal vision of what the future of America was going to be all about. And funnily enough, we're living it now. I mean, you just go down onto Skid Row and you see the squalor and the human waste that is down there, and the multinational, multi-ethnic ethnicity of Los Angeles is now very evident. And everything that it said LA was going to be, it's slowly but surely creeping into reality.
What we'd done, I think, was a dark novel. It was rather novelistic. And I didn't really realize that eventually became the true longevity and value of the film, is that you can revisit it constantly, like rereading maybe one of your favorite books, and you always find you get sucked in again. I still think it's one of the best films I've made.
The commercial and critical revival of Scott's movie in the 90s suggested that history had finally caught up with Blade Runner. Indeed, wherever you looked, from the pages of cyberpunk fiction to the visuals of sci-fi cinema, the style of MTV, and even the design of multimedia advertising and communication, it was clear that Blade Runner had actually shaped the face of the future. And the new director's cut, with its fleeting vision of a unicorn, also posed a question which has become the key enigma of Blade Runner: the possibility that even its human hero is actually a product of new technology, an android dreaming of electric sheep. So is Deckard really a replicant?
I don't know. I still don't know. That is an enigma.
No, I never thought he was a replicant. No, that's never in my mind.
I think Deckard is a real guy, and I think he's in pain for it, and he knows he's going to live a long time and, like, suffer.
Yes, of course he is. Otherwise, the movie doesn't make sense. You don't need just one more super intelligent detective, hunting these people down. Bryant calls him in deliberately. He's a replicant, and they all know it except Deckard.
I know that Ridley wanted him to be, but I think that's kind of like a joke. And that's where the unicorn came from.
When Harrison's on his piano, looking at all the photographs and wondering who these people are and what they're after, he's drinking, he's a bit drunk there. And as he drinks, you go off into the unicorn, so it's a reverie. And that was the only reference right there to this abstract image, which is a unicorn. Because at the end of it, he comes out of his thought process. And that never occurs again till the end of the movie. Because when he comes in that apartment, he thinks Eddie's gone in there and killed her, because they know where she is. And when they come out, there it is. Looks like the unicorn.
And it means?
He's a replicant.
We were in awe of trying to figure out how we were going to execute it.
The first Jurassic became sort of history, this extraordinary